Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Welcome to the God Talk, guys. My name is Michael Mack. This is my friend Michael Koran, and we meet to talk about God, talk about faith. And each week at this time on Cambridge Community Access Television, we're here to explore where God, faith intersects with our lives. We get up close and personal. And you have a special request, I think, Michael, that you would like to open this show. We're going to follow this show with one immediately afterwards, so you're going to get a full hour of the God Talk, guys, if you stick around. But this is Michael's show, and so he gets the call on. You've got the leadership position.
Wow.
For this show, and you'd like to begin with.
Well, this is literally Pentecost today.
Yes, it is.
And Pentecost comes from Shavuos, which is a Jewish holiday. Shavuos is the word for week.
For week.
It is word for week. And
so we're celebrating the week.
Or the weeks.
Weeks,
plural.
yes, okay.
And it's 7 weeks after we leave Egypt. The Hebrew slaves, or maybe go through the Red Sea, I'm not sure exactly what.
So this is where Moses was bringing the Israelites
out of slavery,
out of the land of Egypt,
out of slavery into freedom. It's a story that still inspires people.
Oh yeah,
including Martin Luther King, including the slaves marching.
Yeah, so it's a very important story in the
quite something
in African American history. So,
and for Jews creating Israel at the end of every Passover Seder. Some of the last words are next year in Jerusalem. Because for 2,000 years, Jews were out of Jerusalem.
Right.
And the
diaspora.
The Seder, remembering this, meant that we wanted to go back to, even though we had never seen it.
So what's the connection then between this and the Pentecost, which is today?
It's the same holiday.
Same holiday.
When the Jews, after Jesus died, Jeshua in Hebrew, after he died, Easter Sunday, the church also counts 7 weeks and 1 day, 50 days, in order to celebrate Pentecost, which is instead of...
Penta, 5.
5, yes, 50 days. That on Shavuos, Moses goes up the mountain, Sinai, I've been there, at least one of them they think is Sinai, and receives commandments.
The 10 Commandments.
And
the Decalogue.
Yes, but also the receiving of I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt. And so that was the beginning of taking the slaves and creating them as a people of God. And you can imagine what was going on if he said, no adultery, honor your father and mother, no murder. So you can imagine, I mean, slaves freed can be quite wild. So
freedom.
The story is they were worshiping the golden calf.
We want to be free to do what we want to do.
Yes. So Moses was a party pooper, to say the least.
Yeah. And
comes down with the words, really, in stone from the divine to create a sacred community, really. A special people.
You're reminding me. I mean, the image of Moses coming down the mountain is with 2 stone tablets. Now, is that...
Yes, that's it.
That's it?
Yeah.
2 stone tablets. And does he come down alone with 2 stone tablets?
Yes.
And the word is written, the commandments are written on the stone tablets.
Yep.
Did he go up with the tablets?
I don't know. He might have he was up there for I think 40 days.
40 days, okay.
A long time.
That's an important number in Judeo-Christian.
To make a calf. There was enough time to
to melt down the gold and make a calf.
Now, it's not usually spoken of, but the first time down, when he sees the calf, he throws the stones at them.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yes. You imagine you're working hard on your writing,
right?
And then all of a sudden, and then you have to burn it.
Yeah.
And it was even worse, alas. But this is.
So did he have to?
This is
At the risk of being sacrilegious, did he end up? I don't recall. Did he go back up the mountain for?
Yes, but something happened in between.
Okay.
Which you probably don't know, but is in the Bible.
Okay. Well.
Guess what he did to the calf?
Okay, so the calf was destroyed.
How?
Was it melted?
Yes, it was melted.
Oh, it was melted.
And this is the hard question. What did he do? If you get this, you're really a good Bible student.
All right.
What did he do with the melted gold?
I've got a sense it was a bad thing.
Yes, but you
a hard thing.
I have no idea how. What's the hardest and baddest thing you could do with the melted gold?
How about if you pour the molten gold into somebody's mouth or something like that?
That's only somebody, many buddies.
Okay. Were they Israelites?
Yes.
Okay.
The people that were worshiping the calf.
I see.
As a subtle reminder. That's a hard way to go.
Subtle indeed, yeah.
That's a hard way to go.
Yeah.
Wow. I was force-fed as a child, as you know. That meant I should be compassionate for these people.
Well, I should think so.
Or maybe that's going in style. If you're going to die, gold poured down your throat.
Yeah, better than lead, I guess. But
then he goes back up again and gets them again. And this time
they don't make a calf.
Very reluctant. Really, it really wasn't a living option, as they say. I don't think we want to do that anymore.
There is somewhere in the scriptures, and it might be in Exodus. It's in it's in the Pentateuch somewhere, I believe, somewhere in the first 5 books, where maybe I should back off from that. I'm not even sure, but I know that it's in the Jewish Bible, where someone, it may have been David, in order to punish a community that the Israelites were fighting, went out and snipped off, if I have this right,
right.
Snipped off the foreskins of all of the men that they slayed.
Yes. That was because the king, Saul.
Okay, so this, Saul, okay.
No, Saul told David to do this.
Okay.
As proof. How do you know?
How do you know that? How can you prove to me that you killed
these people?
Right.
And you can't, they couldn't be Israelites because Israelites didn't have foreskins. So we had to find, it was like an ad on Craigslist. Foreskin people wanted.
Oh, boy, I guess this is before scalping. This is what they did before scalping.
That's quite something just to envision doing that.
It's hard to envision.
Well, it might be exciting in certain ways, but
it was certainly one of the big obstacles after Jesus died and rose from the dead and ascended to heaven, and Paul came to bring the gospel to all of the peoples of the world.
Yes.
And try to convince the people to be Jesus followers.
Yes.
And he had a twist on what the other Jesus followers, the disciples who were alive when Jesus was teaching, were saying, well, if you want to be Jesus follower, you have to be a Jew. So you got to get the circumcision.
And no shrimp.
Shrimp. Oh, right.
No shrimp.
Yeah, no shellfish.
No roast pork.
Yeah.
Lobster.
And Paul was saying no. He said this at great length in Galatians.
No
in fact,
no cheeseburgers. No cheese with meat.
Oh, okay. Is that one of the 613?
Yes. Yep.
The 613 laws that the.
It was
so he came down with 10 major commandments, and then there were 603.
And there was one little one where we are going astray, but let's go.
We're going totally. We've lost.
No,
the
we have not. No, we're still with the 10
We're going to circle back.
We're circling back. There's one little commandment. Don't, which is a very kind one in a way, don't cook a kid in its mother's milk.
Don't cook a child?
No,
okay.
A goat.
Okay.
Don't cook a kid in its mother's milk. May be compassionate, take the mother's milk and why kill it? But you don't do that. And from that little commandment, that was the commandment, the Jews created this whole kosher tradition of no milk with meat.
Hmm.
So you have to wait 6 hours after eating meat to have a cheese sandwich.
Well, those who practice food combining espouse the idea of not eating fruit with some things, not eating, and I think not combining proteins. So in a very similar way, no meat, no cheese,
Wow.
no milk, no fish, that kind of thing.
And this was...
You got to wonder where this stuff comes from, though. I mean, some of it really makes sense and has been scientifically validated.
Yes.
And in fact, I think even circumcision has been shown to be a medically valid procedure because it reduces the amount of bacteria that can build.
Oh, they discovered circumcised people get less AIDS, I believe, in Africa.
Circumcised people get
Less AIDS.
AIDS.
Less AIDS.
Okay.
Way less. Well, so these were some of the commandments that came down. And Pentecost, as you know,
As we're circling back, yes.
is the Jews who loved Jeshua, Jesus, were meeting in the same room that the Last Supper happened.
That is believed.
Yes, I believe at least. And
The cenacle.
and when they, what does that word mean?
The cenacle, it comes from the Latin cenus, I believe, which means meal.
Oh, my.
So it was the
Place of the meal.
Yeah, the room for the meal. Cenacle.
And they experience in this room, as you've revealed to me, a spirit coming upon them and moving them to speak in tongues. Somewhat like Moses, because they were celebrating Shavuos then. They were celebrating Moses going up and getting the word. And in this room, they were feeling that coming down to them was in fire. It said that Moses perhaps wrote the Ten Commandments in fire and stone. And so the fire coming down to them, and they too had a word. They were all Moses's in a way, receiving a word that they didn't quite understand. They were speaking it. Some people thought they were drunk.
Yes. Yeah.
But the word came and the Spirit came.
And there's actually a parallel there because Moses encountered the Lord in the first big way through the burning bush, through
Yep, that too.
the fire that did not that was there but did not consume the bush.
So,
And it seems like it so often happens that there in the New Testament, in the Christian Bible, there is a parallel to something that happened earlier in the Jewish Bible.
and just understanding it in a new modern way, which
Yes.
we need to do now with these.
To reinterpret
To
for
make
our
it,
time.
make it real for us now. So that would be a question. Now that we have this history, in 2014, in June, are there ways for us, even now on the show with you, are there ways to feel the Spirit
To feel, to experience in some way.
and to speak words inspired by it, even if we don't understand them? And there's a church near here on William Street that people do this on Fridays.
You and I have both
Yes.
been there.
And they do hear that. They do this.
Speaking in tongues.
Yes, and somehow doesn't quite feel appropriate here in the show to do that. You and I could probably do that if we wanted to in that church. I have done that.
Well, there's also the charismatic, the Catholic group that meets at the Paulus Center in downtown Boston. Has been meeting there for about 3 years now. You came to one of the very early sessions.
Yes.
And speaking in tongues is practiced there as well.
And as soon as it's a community that says this is okay,
Then it's okay.
Then somehow it comes.
Yeah.
Quakers, I'm a member of. Don't attend except for the artists and writers. The Quaker meeting here in town at 5 Longfellow Park, and they sit silently. And when they began, someone would feel moved to stand.
When they began, like now, or
No,
way
I'm sorry.
back in the day?
When they began in 1600s in
George
England.
Fox,
Yes.
founder.
And he was wild.
Yeah.
He would walk into churches. England was, of course, fighting wars That's what they like to do. And he would walk into a church, because the churches were supporting the wars, as churches sometimes do. And he would walk right in the middle of the service and say, "There's blood on your hands." They put him in jail. It was quite, "There's blood on your hands." So the Spirit moved him to do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And regardless of consequences. So he was put in jail, and his wife was put in jail.
One thing you got to say about the Quakers, I think that they have perhaps the cleanest record of any of the major faiths or denominations. I mean, they have a history of pacifism that I think is largely unbesmirched. I mean, usually a faith or a denomination somewhere in its history has got at least some stain or some questionable, some problem, some issue. And as a practicing Catholic and a devout Catholic, I can certainly say that's true of my faith, that there are mistakes were made.
There are two kinds of Quaker meetings. One continues to be just sitting, no minister, and waiting for the Spirit to move.
Yeah.
And in the original Quakers with people like George Fox, they would get up and quake, almost like the Pentecost. Words would come out of them. It's been tamed now, especially in New England, where people get up and sometimes it's called the popcorn meeting.
Oh, yeah.
People get up and just give their sacred thoughts, but they're not necessarily all quaking the way it might well have been for many people at the beginning.
But I've been to Quaker meeting and gotten up to speak a few times, and I certainly feel the pounding of the heart, wondering, does the Spirit really want me to like stand up and say this? It's like, no, I don't want to do it. It's like,
I feel moved to do it, whether I like it or not.
Yeah.
So in some ways, Quaker meeting is an attempt to have as we were talking earlier, a practice of Pentecost.
Being receptive to the movement of Spirit, this mysterious wind.
It's more, and it's a wind too, and it's a breath. It's different than the Pentecostal churches now, which more, the one we went to, invites people to get up at the same time, really, and cry and speak in tongues.
It's become a little bit formalized since the early days, and I think the early days of the Pentecostal church in the United States is somewhere around 1909 or something like that.
California.
California, LA,
Stable.
I think.
And there was some pre-Pentecostal in I think Texas.
Yeah. But so it has more of a form now than it used to have. I think in the early days it was much more freestyle.
Yes,
but the same idea that the Spirit moves us to proclaim.
Yes.
Proclaim something, say something.
And whether we understand it or not, it comes from a certain depth beyond our usual understanding.
And one of the things that was particular, that was true of those early Pentecostal meetings, is that way before segregation was outlawed, whites and blacks were worshiping together.
I think that's true, yes.
in a spirit of love and embracing each other, and this was way before its time.
Yes, and the Pentecost that we know, which comes out of a stable of all places in California.
Oh yeah.
Was then it was mostly.
That's what I'm talking about.
Then it eventually became the black people, I think, that began this. Eventually.
Well, I think that
stable in California.
I think that stable was started. I wish I could remember the guy's name, but he came. It may have been from Texas. A black minister who had, because where he came from in Texas, they wouldn't allow blacks and whites to worship in the same building.
Yes.
So he would sit outside this, I think it was a Baptist church, and listen to a preacher inside, a preacher who liked him, but because he was black, he couldn't come inside the church. So he studied under this white preacher, just listening outside the window.
Yes.
And then he took this idea to California, And it started, I think, being largely black, but then it started pulling in whites and Hispanics, and after a while, everybody was in
It's
it.
the most rapidly growing religion in the world, Pentecost.
I've heard that about Mormonism as well, but I've heard that kind of thing about Pentecostals.
Millions. And it makes sense. I mean, you have an experience.
Yeah, you feel something. Yeah. It's not neck up.
And
it's not from the neck up.
Healing, and there's healing, and there's crying. You feel you can in the church. I visited on William Street Friday night. There's services. There's crying, so you can really get you and crying for help in ways that we're more. I'm less likely to do it in public, really crying, Jesus, help me, help. And something happens when you really, not like I'm doing now, when we really let it out. My question is, and I don't know if this can be answered, and maybe it's not a fair question, is it possible to ask for that experience apart from these community meetings? Can we now, with our audience, experience that? Maybe in a milder way. I'm asking for it now. I feel a spirit between us. I feel the words that I'm saying comes from our interacting. It's not ecstatic and wild.
Well, have you had that experience when you were, because I know that you like to watch evangelizing on TV. You like to look at a lot of different religious programs, and
I do it mostly.
So you've seen preachers on TV.
Less intellectually, though I do say the words sometimes. I say, "Repeat after me. I take Jesus into my heart," and that helps. That does things to me. Even saying it now, even though I'm just repeating it, So it's possible. I mean, Jesus said, "Whenever 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, I am there." So it's possible to feel a spiritual presence or Jesus. And Jesus isn't just Jesus. Jesus involves Moses and the whole history.
It doesn't.
Yes?
I think it can also be by yourself. And in fact, there's a long history in Catholicism of the Catholic mystics, the medieval mystics, having experiences of Jesus or Mary or the Holy Spirit.
Alone,
yeah.
Oh, I see. So I'd love a...
I mean, one of the nice things about experiencing it alone is you don't have the kind of self-consciousness that you might feel in a church with people that you might not know well. I mean, as you get to know them better, then it might be easier to do, but certainly easier to do that than do it out on the sidewalk or here and
in front of
our audience.
Very hard, yes. Although in the William Street Church, it seems easier maybe because everybody is crying and no one.
Well, people know each other. They've been doing this for a long time.
So that's interesting to create those situations. Quaker meeting is not. I would shock them if I started crying the way I do in William Street.
If you came in like George Fox and
or even like the William Street Church and of course there's laying on of hands. It's very, very nice.
Yeah.
I think there's some rolling in the. I'm not sure they do any rolling in the aisle at the William Street.
But that's where the expression "holy rollers" came from.
And it was usually a derogatory.
Yeah.
Wow.
As was Quaker, and as was Shaker.
Quaker too.
Yeah.
It was derogatory.
It was a derogatory term, and after a while they just kind of owned it. I mean, they're known as the Friends.
The Friends, yes.
Yeah. The Friends of God, and now the American Friends.
Not even Friends of God, I don't believe.
I believe originally it was Friends of God.
Really?
I think so.
It shocked the meeting. We're now Friends of God versus the Society of Friends, which is much tamer in some ways.
Yeah. Well, they've evolved.
Friends of God,
I imagine.
Or maybe it's devolved. I don't want to be negative, but to be Friends of God is quite a wild statement. Hi, God. How have you been? How are you doing, old buddy?
But it's actually not that wild because it's... I mean, to talk about Jesus, for example, as your friend.
Yes.
You can find that in Catholic hymnals. You can find that in Protestant hymnals. You know, he walks with you. He
Yes.
talks with you.
Well, sounds wonderful to me.
It's that personal Jesus.
Yep. Well, we still have
2 minutes to...
a little bit left.
Well, you wanted to start the whole thing today, Michael, with a prayer.
This was a prayer for me. This really was. I wanted the show to be, which at least for me it is.
Okay.
But you're great at prayers. If you would like to end with a prayer, I would
you're
love
putting
that.
me on the spot.
No,
now.
only if you'd like to. You could give it right back to me.
Okay. Well, here we are. And you know, we never know when our lives are going to end. But we know that this show is going to end in 1 minute. And so it's good to remember, at least once every day, that our lives are going to end, and to live our lives knowing that that's so, because we're likely to live a little bit differently. And so with that as a preview to, or a preamble to your prayer, why don't you close us out?
Oh my, it's hard to pray. I love the way Michael prays. My prayers, may I learn, or may we learn to pray the way Michael Mack prays. It comes from a very deep, articulate place, actually. So that's my prayer, in my own quieter Quaker way. May I and we learn to pray the way Michael prays.
Stick around. We'll be back in 3 minutes.
Well.